Hello, everyone. How's it going? Long time no see. Uh, yeah, welcome back. Welcome back to part two of our deploying JS applications on cloud. And today we are going to continue building what we had started yesterday, which was building a server, a simple Express.js server. But actually, we spent a lot of time on it. So today we will hurry up there. We'll complete that quickly and then we'll move on to building a front end. Then I have finally figured out the two platforms that I want to showcase to you all. One of them is Railway, and the other would be OVH Cloud. And yeah, that's what we are going to do today. I'll repeat this again probably. We'll wait for a couple of minutes for folks to join. And everyone who's here, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It's early Sunday morning for me, too early. So, wait, let me do a bit of setup here. Where is the GHW background? Okay, perfect. This looks nice. And yep, good amount of sound, right? Music, but not too harsh on your ears. And yeah, we will wait for, let's say, 10 more seconds or something. And then we'll move on to building our project that we left yesterday. For folks who are joining today for the first time, I will give you a quick overview in a minute or so. Meanwhile, if you have any part of coding left, you can actually get the code from here. So this is the replit that we had created yesterday, where we basically wrote all a bunch of things, right? Hey, hi. Oh, just saw the chat. Good morning. Hi. Okay, so yeah, this is the replit that we were like using yesterday, which I was coding, and you all could get whatever code I have written from here. So today we are going to continue on that. So if you are missing something, and if there is some part of code that you have not written, you could actually copy it from here quickly. Okay, also let me set up my system. Forgot about it. Okay, so hello. Okay, without any further ado, let's get on. Okay, let's get moving. And yeah, really need to. So I've recently started using Twitch on my side, like on another system, so that I can monitor what exactly is happening if if I'm getting chats. Uh, so yeah, that's how that has been set up. Okay, let's move on. Let's get started. So again, a very quick overview. What are we building? We are building a book library backend, which we will also build a book library front end. Then we'll put like kind of clone or copy paste or whatever is the easiest. We will do that and get all that code locally on our machine. Once we have that, we will then push it on a GitHub repository. Once we have done that, we will deploy it on Railway. Okay, so that's the plan, and let's get into it. Are we gonna code delete or for all books in our backend? Yes, we are going to do that today. So yesterday I realized that we didn't have too much time left, so I kind of left it. But today we will have time because I have this session, which is of 2 hours. Then we'll have a 1 hour break, and then it's again my session for 2 hours. Okay, so like we have 4 hours today to complete all this, and I promise that I'll do my level best to complete everything that's pending. Yeah, 4 hours of development. I hope that's development and not devil. Yeah, dev. Yes. So yeah, 4 hours of development, but we'll chug through it. Don't worry about it. We will chug through it. And everyone who's joining right now, hey, hi, hello. Okay, let's move on. What are we going to focus on right now? Also, I hope the screen is not too big or small or whatever. Okay, I think it should be fine enough. Let me check on if I move away, the screen should be more in focus and then it should be proper. Yeah, I think so. This should be proper. Okay, let's move on. So we wrote the API for deleting a single book. Now we are going to continue and write a delete all. Okay, so let's write a delete all. So app dot delete. So again, of course, it would be app dot delete, and this would be slash API slash. Now yesterday I was like, we should give this route a name which would be different, or so that no one clears it accidentally. So I am going to call it delete dash database. So this is a route which is not similar to others because everything else was slash API slash books, right? But this would be delete database because, well, this is a very, very, very tricky route, right? So slash API slash delete database, and again, this would have a request, and that starts again the autocomplete. So request comma response, and what are we going to do here? So the way, like, ideally deleting the database is like going over the database list and then checking if there is the value object, and whatever is the value, actually changing it to kind of setting it empty. Or we can also go over every key in the database list and delete that key. If you delete the key, the value automatically gets deleted. So we are going to do the second one, which is like delete the key. But what if the database is already empty? Well, in that case, nothing's going to happen. So we are going to do like db.list, add a dot then on it, then a keys obj, keys object, and then we will create a const keys equals to, hopefully, keys object dot value exists, or it will be empty, or we can set it to empty if that does not exist. And then, since loading the database is asynchronous task, it can take 1 second, 10 seconds, 1 minute. We are going to do promise dot all, which basically says that when everything is done, okay, like wait for everything to get completed, and then keys dot map, and inside this we will give it a key where we will say that from the database delete each key. Once this is done, so we are on line 105 at the end of closing off our first then, we can do a second then. And we can kind of console log it if we want. So console dot, we can do log, but since this is a very big thing in a way, we can do warn. Okay, So then it would print in yellow, at least I think it should. So database cleared, and res dot status code. What would be the status code? We will send a 204 that something has happened, which we I think did even yesterday. Yeah. So 204. It was successful. Okay. So we say here that it was successful, but at the same time, uh, there is no response to send as such. So we can just do dot send empty. And then finally, we can do a dot catch here and say that, oh, what if there is an error? Something that we have not captured. In that case, you remember rest.status and this copying this whole thing. Rest.status 500 error, and instead of error deleting the book, it would be error deleting the database. I should have kept the deleting the database. And let me click on format. And there is a question. Can you explain why Replit is suggesting the exact code I want to write? I'm assuming the AI Ask AI is open. And secondly, sometimes there are just so many ways to write code. Example, if you start with a db.list and then you can go like dot then on it, and then it sees, oh, you want to delete database, there is just so many ways to do it. One of them would be to set the value to empty. One of them would be to delete the key, which automatically deletes the value. And this is a better way to delete something. Uh, so yeah, I think like this is what Replit gives you, the database deletion thing. So I think that is why you're getting the suggestions exactly what you want. Uh, Similarly, let's say if you have used console.won before, then it will suggest you console.won, or it can also suggest you console.log. Uh, the text, again, what else would you even write? So I think uh, that's why the Replit AI is giving such good suggestions, probably. And okay, let me see. I think that should be it. So if I go to our shell and if I start our dev server, which should start nodemon, and okay, hi, GHW is there. So our server is up and running nicely. Now let's see. I actually closed Hopscotch yesterday. Thank God it kind of remembers. So let's first see our all books. So we have one, two, and three. Three books. Okay. So we have three books right now. I want to get a book four here. It should say book not found. That's nice. Book three. Okay, that works. And oh, this was adding a new book. I don't want to do that. We already have three books, right? So we know that we have three books, but now I want to clear the database. So to clear the database, what I will do is take this whole delete thing, oops, and paste it here, right? But our API, the endpoint is slash API slash delete database. So I am going to go here and do slash API slash delete dash database. And it says it cannot get that API. I wonder why. Oh, what's our this thing? Should be the same mostly. Did I make a spelling mistake? No, right? There's a slash API slash delete database. And well, this API should exist for sure. I'm going to copy paste it. Interesting. Oh, I'm doing a get request. See, this is where the problem is. I'm trying to do a get request on slash API slash delete database. And it even said that cannot get slash API slash database. So this needs to be a delete request. So now it should work. And as you can see, 204, no content. Now if I go over to my get all books, that should be a empty database. So we have successfully cleared our database. We have deleted everything in the database. Okay, I think you all are reading too much into it. That's how LLMs generally work, right? They predict the next best word that should fit in the whole context of things that you're doing. And Triplet LLM is good. Okay, so like don't read too much into it. It's okay. Okay, moving on. So we have actually completed all our routes. We have forward slash route, simple enough. We have a app.post to add a new book. We have a get route to get all the books. We have a get route to get a single book. We have a put route to update a single book. We have a delete route to delete a single book, and we have a delete route to delete the whole database. And this comment is not really needed anymore, so I'm going to delete that part. And yeah, I think this should be it. Okay, this is all done. The server is up and running, and we are going to leave it as is. Now we are going to create a new replit for front end. So I'm going to go to the home page, and I'm going to go to create REPL, and let's search for React and React JavaScript. Now this is very shady name. So this was book library backend. So I am going to create a front end called as book library front end. We are going to create the REPL, and once it gets created, not really needed this. Uh, we can give it the title. So in index.html, we can go like book library uh, front end, probably. Not really needed, but let's say I will leave it as is. Uh, what else? We go over to the source folder. We have a app.jsx file, a index.jsx file, and an app.css file. So this is where our magic is supposed to happen in these three files slash folders. Uh, we also have the Vite config file, and yeah, let's move on. So what are we going to do? So first we are going to go over to our app.jsx, and we are going to remove this main part because not really needed. So I am going to give this a class name of app, and here we will say this is actually a h1 tag called book library, and add a horizontal rule, and that should be good enough. Okay, so now how do I run this? click on the run button, and that should do the magic, do the trick. And if I open it in a new tab, there we go. So that is our front end beginning. Okay. So book library, that's all we wrote, and added a horizontal line just below it. So what are we trying to achieve here? So we are going to go for a very simple version of what the book library should look like. And let me see if I can get Excalibur. Yep, there we go. So we are going to go for a very simple version of how our book library should look like. So let's say this is our page where the opacity is too less. It should be 100% opaque. Okay. Uh, think this should be good enough. Okay. So this is, suppose this is a web page. On the top here, we are going to write book. Why is it so small? Oh, maybe I was zoomed out a bit too much. Okay, this should be good. Yeah, perfect. Uh, okay, perfect. So let's say this is our page. So what are we trying to achieve here? So this is our web page, and let's say here at the top we have already written book library with underline here, right? That's how it looks like. We are going to have a few more things. So like let's say this thing where for some reason this is too sloppy. We will reduce the sloppiness. Okay, so there's this part where we will have uh, all books. So this here should show a list of all the books. So like let's say uh, we can have a button here, right? So a very simple button to say get all books. Okay, a simple button to say get all books. And now for this button, whenever you click on it, it should call our get all books API, right? So this one slash API slash books. So it should call this get all books API, and it should show it as a list. Where did that go? Yep, there we go. So it should show here as a list. So like one dot title dash author. This is the format it should show the books. So two dot title dash author, like something like that. So that's our get all books, and this is a button. So I'm going to just color it different. Uh, okay, so that's our get all books. Then secondly, we will have another section here, uh, which should be transparent. So the second section, we can kind of, what else do we have? We have add a book. Yeah, we need a add book section. So like add a book. So add a book, it should have two inputs. So this is, let's say, the title input. Then you have the author name input box. Okay. And then you'll have a button to say add a book, add new book. something like that, right? So that's a button. So whenever you add a new book, your all books basically should update and it should be written here, or you can click on get all books. So that should show the new book that you have added. So that's your add a book. Then we can have a delete a book section, right? So something like it needs an ID. So for deleting a single book, we need a ID. So ID here and a button, which I'm going to now copy paste. Delete a book. Okay. So once you have the ID and you click on this, it should delete the book with that particular ID. Like we have kind of handled that scenario, right? Of deleting a single book. And then finally, we can have a section of deleting the database, right? So it needs to have a button right here, delete database. Perfect. So this is what we are trying to achieve. Very uh, you know, set new book button in middle. Oh, I mean, not going to focus too much on CSS, frankly. But yeah, this is ideally what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a single page application kind of, where we have few sections. One of them is getting all the books. There is one section of adding a book. There is a section of deleting a book, and there's a section of deleting the database. And I am not putting anything for the put functionality, which is updating a single book for now at least. But you can add that as kind of an add-on slash, I don't know, homework or just learning experience. So yeah, this is what we want to achieve. So let's get started. So we will have like this all books and all. So also I'm not going to focus too much on how React works. uh, we want to complete it ASAP. So I am going to get started very quickly. So what are we going to use? So there's this export default function app. Okay, we can get started right here. So we can have a simple state which we can call as books comma set books. A simple state, and this uses the use state from React, which initially is empty. Okay, so these are the variables. So like this is the variable that is going to store our books that is returned from the API. The very similarly, like let me add a new book. Like you get this object, but when you do a get all, it's inside this array, right? So this empty array suggests that initially our use state is empty and there are no books available. Now we will create a fetch function, the fetch books function. And now this is supposed to be asynchronous. Why? Because it can take time over the network, over the internet. It can take 1 second, 10 seconds, 1 minute to fetch the book. So that is why it's a asynchronous function. And inside this, we will have a try catch. So first, let's say const response. So try catch basically means that you try this thing, but if you get an error, catch that error. Very similar to the whole dot catch. So try const response equals to, we will use the Axios library to fetch the data. So await Axios dot, wow, that was weird, Axios dot get. Uh, and what is our endpoint for getting the books? It is slash API slash books, right? So Axios, it's a very nice library for doing all things related to fetching. Uh, I think 5 million, something like that. Huge amount of weekly downloads, right? Uh, in general, let's say this is very, very, very popular library, and we are going to use that for fetching data from the front end. So like here you can see you can do axios.get to make a get request, and it also has your axios.post to make a post request. Then you, of course, you will have the delete, the put, the patch, and yeah. So that is why we are going to use this Axios library to perform all our requests and stuff. We haven't installed it, so we should first. So I'm going to go back to npm and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come back and go into our shell and paste this. And let me also share this with you all. Okay, so Axios has been installed. Let's move on. So now we are saying axios.get. But how does Axios know what is the base URL? Like, this basically means that there is some base URL that has been set at some place, okay? And after that, like, let's say, what is the base URL in hopscotch? It's this D78B3DA blah blah blah, right? So this is the base URL, and after, at the end of it, this is what we are doing. Slash API slash books is what we are appending to that. So we also need to set the base URL. Also, I should import Axios. So I'm going to go on line 2 here. I'm going to say import Axios from Axios because that has been installed now. And right here on the top, before we get into the function, I'm going to say Axios dot defaults dot base URL, and that is equal to, currently it will be our this URL, right? So this is our base URL for now, and don't need the extra slash there. You can add it actually. No, you don't need it. Yeah, it's good to not have it because we are going to add this extra slash here, right? So this is our endpoint, and then axios.get will append slash API slash books at the end of this. Okay. So that's our, like, we will wait for Axios to get the data and store it in this response uh, variable. And now we can create another variable where we will say, like, what can we call it? Let's say fetched books. That is equal to whatever response that we get. So Axios response, it has dot data. The dot data actually stores the data. Okay. And on that, we are going to map over it because it will be an array. And remember, we have like so many book objects. In that, for an individual book object, we are only interested in this value part. So the book object basically means this particular thing. Okay. And if there are two of them, it would go over it individually because we are using the map function. So map basically means that go over this array one by one. So take this first one, and then I'm interested in only the rest, the dot value of this. Okay. So we will say that I only want the dot value part of whatever response that you get. Once you have that response, this set books should be fetched books. Okay, so set books is something that React gives you. The in the use state, you are initially saying that it's an empty array, But once you have done all this, you want to set the value of this particular variable, the books variable. So you use the function set books, which is, if you hover over it, it gives you like, it's a set state action. Not going in detail, but you use the set part to set the value of the variable, which is the books part. And now we will say that catch an error if there is any, which I hope there isn't. And we can go like console dot. You remember we have console.log, we have console.warn, and we also have console.error. Okay. So I can say like error fetching books. And what is the error? We can print that. Okay. So this error, we can print it right here. And yeah, this should basically help us fetch the data, right? So I am going to come over here below our horizontal line, and I'm going to say there's a div tag, and inside that we have another div tag for now, because we will divide the whole thing into a left panel and the right panel, right? So there's a left side, there's a right side. So we can give this a class name of left side. Yeah, that should be good. And what can we do? We can actually what can we do? We can call fetch books. Let's call fetch books here actually. And once we have fetch books, let's console log it. So console.log the fetch books function. Okay, formatting this. And okay, we don't have much right now. Let me reload this page. I'm going to go into inspect, going to console, clearing everything, every error, and reloading it. So ideally, I should see something in the console. It says promise pending, which is nice. Promise pending, which is nice. And then there is a bunch of errors. And the errors is blocked by CORS policy. No access control allow origin header is present in the requested resource. Okay. And if you go over the network tab, as you can see, it says 200 okay for some reason, but outside it says there is a CORS error. Okay. What is CORS error? So CORS error, very briefly, if I have to explain, it says cross origin resource sharing is disallowed by default. Okay. So look at this origin. This is .spock.replit.dev. And for our server, if I open that, it is .wharf.replit.dev. Different origins, okay, different origins here. And from one origin, you are trying to access the resource, like from .spock, you're going to .wharf, and browser, basically Google Chrome, disallows that. Okay, it does not allow you to go like this crossovers and stuff. So what do? We need to enable cross origin resource sharing on our backend. We need to tell the backend that, hey, it's okay if people from different origins come and ask me for data. So how do we do that? Very simply, we will need to add the CORS library in the backend. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to send it over to you all. So this basically tells, like once we install this library, we have to just use it, like instead of var, we can do const, I think. Yeah, we can. And you just do app.use CORS, and that is it. Like that actually solves everything. So this will tell our server here that, hey, it's okay to allow requests from .spock.replit.dev to .wharf.replit.dev. Okay, so let's add that. I'm going to stop my server for the time being. I'm going to clear everything on my shell, and then I'm going to do npm I course. And once that's installed, what we can do is go over to our express, and here we can say const course equals to require course, right? And once you have that, you have imported the library. Now I want to, wherever we have used the app.use, actually we can put it right here or before this. We can do like app.use course. I think that's what the documentation suggested, app.use course as a function, it seems. Okay. Yeah. So now if I restart my server, npm run dev, the server is up and running, nothing has changed. But if I go to my book library, let me clear this. Let me also clear the console, and let me do empty cache and hard reload. So that should happen. Okay. So now at least like there's nothing, there's no error going on. It's still trying to fetch. Okay. Too many fetch requests happening, which is bad. Let me stop that. But at least we are not getting course errors. Okay. Okay, perfect. No more fetch happening, but we are not getting course errors, which is nice, right? So at least one bug that could have bitten us in the future is now resolved. Now, what can we do here? So let's say what we want to do is get and show the data. So let's do that, exactly that. We can create, so inside this left side, I can go like there's a h2 tag, it says all books. And inside this, we can have a button, right? On click, it should call this fetch books. So only on click, it should call the fetch books function that we have written, and we can give it get all books as the name, and we have to close the button. Okay, so get all books button, as you can see, now exists right here. uh, okay, now once this will return the books, okay, once the data is here, we can kind of uh, loop over it. So I can go like unordered list, and inside this I can go like the books, which is this particular variable, books dot map each book. Okay, actually I can call it each book, not nook, each book. And here we can say that there's a li tag, and inside, like, let me format this. So we are saying that there's an unordered list, and then we have fetched our books, and the books exists. If that exists, then map over the books array. And for each book, what you need to do is we will say that it should show me the each book dot title and dash each book dot author. Okay, formatting it again. Let's go over here, clear this, reload empty cache and hard reload. Now if I click on get books, and then there were none by Agatha Christie, that's what we had added. If I go to our all books and get that, yes, one book. And you get the idea that this is the title, of course, this is the author name, and we get a warning here, which is in red, which means it's an error from React perspective. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So we need to provide a key prop, okay, prop as in property, and it needs to be unique. How can we ensure that it's unique? Well, very simply, we know that the IDs that we are generating is going to be unique, okay? You will not have one twice because we are basically doing a counting there. You will not have one twice. So we can take the ID and provide that as a key prop. So key equals to each book dot ID. So that solves it. Also, I can take this each book dot ID and put it right here with a dot or a bracket. How did we want it? Excalidraw, one dot. Okay. So each book dot ID and the dot. So now if I go get all books, one dot and then there were none by Agatha Christie, right? I think I would like bracket instead of a dot. Yeah. So one and this. Or instead of doing the unordered list, we could also do an ordered list. So OL, if you do that there, you have to do it here. Get all books. Yeah, so even this works out, right? So I can remove the ID from here, at least like wherever that's happening. And even this works. The only problem is that when we want to delete something, like when we want to delete an individual book, this ID, this ordered list one, will clash with actually the ID of whatever is our book. So I'm going to go back and going to unordered list. And yeah, I think this should be good enough. Okay. Uh, you can make it fancy. So like put it in a span where this is bold and this is normal, so that it's like, oh, I know this is the book name or the author name. This could be italic and stuff, but I'm not going to go too much on that. So we have successfully added added the code to get a new book. Uh, but I think I would like this to be a component. Why? Because uh, this will kind of make the whole app.jsx very dirty, because after this we also have to add the code for add a book. Then we also have to add a code for deleting a book. We also have to add a code for clearing the database. So that would become here very ugly. So I am going to go to my source folder, going to create a new folder called as components. And inside this, I'm going to create a book list .jsx. And this is where we will actually define all our code. So I'm going to go like const book list equals to, it will take in two things. It will take in the books and it will take the fetch books function. So two things as an input. And finally, it will return me the div tag that we had created there. So I can, okay, I can create a new div here. So let's say a div tag, and inside this div tag, we can cut everything from this h2 tag to this ul. Okay, so I'm going to cut that, come over here and paste it. So, okay, so I think that should be it, frankly. So now if I go over to my book library, there's no button and there's nothing. But if I go to my app.jsx, what I need to do is call my component here. Okay, call my component. So how do I call a component? You have to first import that. But for that, you have to first export it from here. So I can go like export default book list. Okay, this says that you are exporting some data from this file, the data being this function. Okay, this component. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go like book list. And as you can see, it actually imported it from dot slash components slash book list. Now book list, if you hover over it, it says it needs books and fetch books. So my books is going to be this particular books right here, and my fetch books is going to be this particular function, fetch books. Now if I go here, magic, there you have all the data and it works, right? Get all books works. So that is how we create a component. So this was the div of the whole thing actually. uh, Now let's create there's a div inside this one. We'll call it div class name equals to right side. So for all the styling, we will do that at the end. Okay, so there's left side, there's a right side, and now let's what's happening, what's going to happen here. Now as per our diagram, we need add book, delete a book, delete database, 3 sections. So let's go to our front end components and let's do that one by one. So one is add book, add book.jsx. Now it's going to be very similar to this. Okay, so like const add book. What is it going to have? Is there going to be any prop inside this? Well, yes, ideally I would want the fetch books function inside here. Why? Because whenever someone adds a book, it should then trigger the fetch books function. Okay, and you also need to call it, because that's where we are doing the whole get request. Yeah, so I'm going to say that this should have fetch books. Now if you remember, to add a new book, if we go to our post request, it needs the title and it needs the author. So we need to hold that data into a state variable. So let's do that. So const title comma, to set the data you do a set title. Okay, and to hold the state locally you use the use state. And what is the initial input going to be? It's going to be empty. Similarly, we can do for the author. So const author comma set author equals to use state and empty. Okay, formatting it. Now once we have this, what are we going to do next? Now we need to create a new function to handle the add book. Okay, so const what can we call it? That was fetch books. This would be add books, or add a single book, actually add book, I think should be good enough. And this is going to be an asynchronous request again. Why? Because we are going to perform the post request. So try await Axios. Oh, forgot to import Axios, but thank God that this did it. So Axios.post. What is the endpoint for our post request? It is actually /API/books. So same as our get, the only difference is the type of request. Okay, so /API/books, but it needs to have two things in the body. It needs to have the title and it needs to have the author in the body. Okay, so whatever is the value of the title and whatever is the value of the author is going to go as a part of this thing await in the post request. Once that's done, once let's say you have an input box, you start typing into it. You say the name of the book is Sherlock Holmes, the author is Arthur Conan Doyle, and then you click a button to add book. That's done. Now you want to clear your input box, right? So now we will say that the set title is then after this happens and this is completed, you set title to empty, you set the author to be empty, and you call the fetch books function. Okay, so the fetch books function should trigger. And here we will have catch. If any error occurs, we can say, we can show a alert. Okay, what will be the alert? So you can show the alert as error dot. So the error thing has a response on it dot data, I think. Actually, you can just show the error. Or let's say if this error is very weird and very, if it's not present, actually, we can just say error adding book. And should not call it add book. I can call it add book function. Yes, this is also add book, right? Add book component and add book function. Uh, okay, now here we can do a return, a div tag, that should be nice. H2 tag saying add, what was that? Add a book. Add a book, right? And then after this, we need to have two input boxes. So first input, it is going to be of type text. You have multiple types actually. You have type button, checkbox, color, date, datetime, local, email, file, hidden, image, blah blah blah, number. Password is what makes your password box have that star star and circle circle. Okay, it hides whatever you're writing, but this is going to be of type text. I don't want to hide what you're writing. You can have a placeholder. The placeholder is what we see here, like this title written. Okay, so the placeholder will be title. The value will actually be this title. Okay, the use state title. And when someone changes it, so on change, we can say event has been, like on change you have a event, and that event will call the, like it will say that whatever the user is typing, which is actually available on event dot or e dot target dot value, you should set it to the set title function, and that creates a simple input box of type title. So actually, let me go over here and let's call that add book. Oh, I think I forgot to export it. So I should also export something from here. Export default add book. Now if I go to our app.jsx and say add book, and it needs one prop. What's the prop called? It's called fetch books. So fetch books equals to, what will be the value? It will be exactly the name of that function, fetch books. So if I go over here on the front end side, you can see there's a add a book and there's this title, right? Uh, Now if I want to add the second thing, so whenever I start typing into it, this on change gets triggered. Okay, this on change functionality happens and it sets the title to whatever you are typing inside the input box. I need another input box here. uh, Actually, I'm going to copy paste this. You copy this, paste it. It will, because it's going to be of type text, but it will not be placeholder title. It would be placeholder as author. So you can see the placeholder, the grayed out part. The value will not be title, of course, because if it's title, whatever I type on the left hand side will be reflected on the right hand side. So I don't want that. The value will be actually author, which is this. Okay. And on change, instead of setting the title, we want to set the author. So set author to that. And finally, we needed the button. Okay, so button on click. When someone clicks on that button, it should call the add book function. Add book. And let's close the button. Okay, so there's the button, there's the input. It's all like stuck together, smushed together. We will fix that with CSS, or we'll try to fix that with CSS. Uh, okay, I think that's good enough for adding a book. We need two more. One is delete a book. So delete book.jsx. Uh, so let's do that. Const delete book equals to empty. Fetch books is again because, well, you want to trigger the fetch books once the book has been deleted. And I am going to do export default delete book right now so that we don't forget it later. And actually, I did not test the add a book functionality. So if I do a get all books, there's one book. And if I do here Sherlock Holmes, the author is Arthur Conan Doyle. If I click on add book, that happens. Okay, it gets added. It triggers the fetch all books, and this list automatically gets updated. Okay, so that is why we are putting our fetch books. And if I go over to the network tab, you can see that this was initially a get request. Then we created a post request, which returned the status code as 201 created. Then it triggered a new get request, okay, on slash API slash books. And now it returned two values. Previously, it returned only one value. Then we did a post request and then it returned now two values. Okay. So that's how you know things are working fine. Now let's quickly create the delete book and delete database. We will do the CSS after a quick break later. But for now, let's do the, or actually we can, before going on the break, let's do the CSS as well so that our UI is complete at least. The const id comma set id. Why id? Because you remember, for deleting a book you need to have the id, right? You delete a book based on the id that has been provided. So const id equals comma set id equals, well, state variable, right? So you should now get a hang of it, that, oh, I know what's going to happen. This is like a pattern, and that is what actually even LLMs, show or predict. That's how they predict the next word. There's a very similar pattern of writing code because, well, everyone learned it the same way. So there was a add book function. So now we will have a delete book function, async, and try. Well, what you're going to do, you're going to wait for the delete book to happen, right? So axios dot delete. Now there is one nice thing here. When we were doing the add book, what we did was inside our double inverted commas, this is where we defined the route or of where to post, and with this curly brackets here, we have basically specified the body, right? But for deleting a book, the id that you want to delete it, like if you want to delete, where is it? Also I should rename it. So delete a book, delete database. Okay, delete a book. So when you want to delete a single book, you provide the id in the top. Okay, so that is your query parameter. So how do we do that in Axios? Well, you have to provide it as part of slash API slash books slash the id. The id, we are already storing it in this variable, right? So how do we do that? We can just simply use backticks and provide it in that. So backticks, we can go like slash API slash books and then slash, we can use the dollar curly brackets. This is which says that you can actually add a variable here. So when you use the dollar curly brackets, you add a variable value here. So whatever is the ID that the user types will be stored in this ID, and it will be passed to this axios.delete. And that should be it. And once that happens, you want to set the input box back to empty, right? We did that when we were doing the add book. So set ID should be empty. And then we also want to trigger the fetch books again. Okay, because once we trigger the fetch books, our all books would get updated. I think I should also rename this to get all or all books, because add book, delete book, get all books, something like that, I think. And then we can do a catch, and we can do a error on that. Then we can do a alert. And what we could do here, we could go like error or error deleting a book. Not a book, the book that you're trying to delete, unfortunately could not be deleted. And we come to the end of this function. All we need to do is now return the UI for it, right? So I will add a div tag. Inside this div tag, we can have a h2 tag, delete a book, add a book with a B small. Oh, I could have seen it right here. Delete a book. And you have input. It would be of type equals to text input. What will be the placeholder? Well, placeholder will be ID. What will be the value? The value will be the ID variable right here. And finally, on change, what should happen? Well, we know that when user starts to type, it's present on event.target.value. So all we need to do is set ID to E. Event or E, like short form is E. Whatever you write, you can write your name. You can write MLH and MLH.target.value. Okay. And then you just close it. So this input is a self-closing tag. Button is like you have to write button, and then you have to also close it with button. Delete book. Excuse me. And on click, what should it call? It should call the delete book function, right? And now we go over to our app.jsx, and after the add book, we will do the delete book. And that is self-closing now. And delete book, it takes one parameter of fetch books. So I can just copy paste what I have here, right here, format it, and we should have a delete book. So there's the first one, there's the second one. I want to delete the second one. So I click on 2, I click on delete. So if I go over here, so on my network, it says that the request method was was delete. The status code was 204 no content. The request was sent to this, and it's green because it was successful. And then it triggered the get all books, right? And now we have only one book, and you can see this refreshed again, right? Sorry, bots again. Need to okay, sorry about that. Now let's get back. So we have added a delete a book as well, and all we have remaining is delete all books. So let's do that. Where am I going? Here. Delete book and delete database, right? So delete database dot jsx. So we can do const delete database, and well, delete database again, it should trigger the fetch books. So we will pass that as a parameter, uh, as a prop, not as a parameter, as a prop. And now inside this, all we need to do is const uh, delete database function, and you see the pattern, it should be async, and we need to do a try inside this, then await, then axios dot delete. And what was our API endpoint for delete all, like delete database? It was slash API slash delete database, right? So I can come back here wherever it, yeah, right here, and that's it. Once that happens, we want to trigger the fetch books again. Okay, and we can add a catch here saying error, and then we can show a alert to the user which will be with error, or if that doesn't happen, then error deleting database. Okay, format it, and wherever this closes, we will go return a div tag, and all it needs inside is a button. So button, which will have on click, it should, spelling mistake here, delete database function, and this will be delete database and button. Okay, perfect. And what else? So yeah, on click should be good enough. Oh, we also need to import it in app.jsx. So right here below this, we will have a delete. Oh, we forgot to export it. Export default delete database. Now, if we come over to app.jsx, we will do delete database. It will have the fetch books, which will be equal to the fetch books, and that's it. Okay, formatting it. And now we have the delete database. Right, so we have kind of completed all the functionalities. It looks ugly though. So let's write some CSS, some quick CSS. So what can we have? We can have dot app. Okay, so dot app, it will have a max width of, let's say, 800 pixels. Then we will say that it should be center aligned, so margin would be 0 auto. Okay, let's add some padding of 20 pixels. I think should be good enough. And for the font family, what are our options? Does it show? It doesn't. Does it show right now? Apparently not. You can go for Arial, comma, sans serif font. Okay, so now this is a font like this. So there we go for our this thing. So now it's kind of center aligned to the whole screen, right? So that's a very simple thing. The h1 tag, which was the book library, I want that to text align center, and you can add some more padding here and there, some margin around that. So like, let's say you can do margin bottom of 20 pixels, let's say. So yeah, this is what it looks like, and you can see there's a margin bottom of 20 pixels. I can make it like 25, so that would add more spacing or something. I will keep it as 20. Then what else? uh well, we need the whole thing to be like left and right. So let me close a bunch of these things first. Let me focus only on our app.js. So what do we need to do on app.jsx? We need that whole left and right. So I can actually add a class name here. Let's call it container. You have the left side, you have the right side, and that should be it. Yep. Now I can do like dot container. You can use something called as a display flex, and the gap between the two containers should be like, let's say, 20 pixels. As you can see, I like 20 pixels. And that kind of makes this whole thing in two columns, right? So this is the first column, and that's the second column, and the gap between those two columns should be like 20 pixels. So this is the left side, the right side, okay, and the gap in between would be like 20 pixels. So let's focus on our left side and right side, right? So dot left dash side is what we named the class there, right? Yeah, the class name. So what I'm doing is basically styling the class names, okay? And if it's a class, you use the dot notation. If it's a ID, so like you can have something like ID equals to something, then you use the hash notation, okay? Uh, what could be done? We can say this is flex1, and for the right side, the right dash side, we can say this is flex1 again, but right side had three things, so I'm going to go for display flex again, and I'm going to say flex direction should be a column. So you can see if I did not do column, it was like one next to each other, and the gap between the columns should be 20 pixels. Now if I go here, there's your different sections. This is the first section, second section, third section, okay, and you see the gap between them, the purple lines, is 20 pixels, okay. The delete database, maybe we should give that a title as well. I kind of forgot that. So delete database, that should have a h2 as well, saying delete db. Yeah, so add a book, delete a book, delete db, all books, and that's some simple styling done. uh, Anything else that we want to, we can add boxes around all these things. So like a box around this, box around this, box around this, box around this, the way we did it here, right? uh, let's do that, but for that we will need to go into each of these components and give them a class name. So let's start with the add book, okay. So add book, we can give it the name as add book container, and I think that should be it. So a class name of add book container. I'm going to copy this, go over to our app.css dot app book container, and we can say that there is a border of 1 pixel, solid, and should be like something gray. Now my favorite place to go for colors is Tailwind CSS colors. As you can see, it's my most used thing, and I can give the gray box color, the border color, to be like this 400. So if I click on it, it copies the color, and I'm going to come here and paste that. So that's my border, 1 pixel solid, and this the padding in that. So everything should be like squished inside by like, let's say 10 pixels. You can give it a border radius if you want. So like rounded boxes. Uh, this was kind of sharp. So actually I'm going to leave it as sharp. So no border radius. Uh, and the background color. So it should not be white because background dash color. Why? Because our whole background in general is white. So I am actually going to take the gray 100 as the background color. And if, okay, there's no format in CSS, but if you go here, this is what it looks like. Okay, there's a different color in the background. There's the border and it's not rounded, and add a book and the input boxes. Now the input boxes, uh, I think they should have some padding and everything as well because they are squished together, right? So let's do that. So dot, not dot input. Input is a tag that exists in HTML. So we can just directly reference it. So input is, let's say, 5 pixel padding. So now the inside of it becomes bigger, right? What else? We need to add some margin around it. So I can just do margin of 10 pixels all around the input boxes. And that's it, right? Uh, I should not do it on the left, I feel. Just doing the margin on right and bottom should suffice because on the left it looks weird. So what I can do is, so a margin property, it's like top, right, bottom, left. Okay, that's how it goes. So on top, I don't want anything. On right, I want 10 pixels. Top, right, bottom is 10 pixels. And on left, I don't want anything. Okay, much better, right? And as you can see, the input styling applies to title, author, and ID simultaneously. So similarly, we can also add the button styling, right? So I will say that the padding of the button should be like 5 pixels on top. And so if you only do like 5 and 10, like two values, this applies to top and bottom, this applies to left and right. Okay, 10 pixel applies to left and right, 5 pixels applies to top and bottom. Then we want to do like cursor, we need to change it to pointer, so a hand like thing. We can set the background color and everything uh, if you want, but not right now. I will leave it as is. And also the styling of add book container, I want to apply that to everywhere else. So there's a class name of add book container. There should be here a class name of book list dash container. So I can copy this name, come over to my CSS, and wherever we had this add book container, I can go like comma dot book list container, and that should apply to this thing, the all books part. Then for delete book, I can again do something very similar, right? So I can go like delete book container, come over to app.css, comma dot delete book not equals to a dash. Did I add the dash or equal to? Oops, dash container. And finally, for delete database, we can have delete db container and take this, come over to app.css, comma dot this thing. Okay. So now if I go over here, there are boxes around everything and things are styled. You can see this hand icon, input boxes, perfect. Okay. So that actually completes our front end as well. So we have now a back end we have a front end, and very simply, now we need to deploy this to Railway. But for before we do that, let's take a quick break. Okay, we have done like so much coding without any break. So let's take a quick break. Any questions before we go on a break? Once we come back from the break, we will deploy this whole thing on Railway. But we actually need to, or we should kind of copy paste all our code, okay, locally. So that's what I'm going to do as well. I am going to create a folder, then copy, like download these two things, and uh, yeah, just put it somewhere in a folder, then push it on GitHub and do all that. Okay, any questions before we go on a break? Anyone, anything? What's Railway? Good question. So what's Railway? So Railway app, it's a deployment platform. Okay, it's a platform as a service. Okay, so what's a platform as a service? It allows us to deploy our code where we can make some changes in the configuration, but most of it is handled by Railway. Like we will see, like when we deploy our backend and when we deploy our front end, we will see that it actually is like, so effortless. Some bit of efforts here and there, some changes here and there, but everything else is so effortless. And if you go into this pricing, you can get a free trial. Okay, so with the free trial, you get $5 worth of credit, which should be good enough for today's session. Okay, so for today's session, this is like $5 is more than enough, where we want to just see how to deploy it on Railway. We will check their logs, we will check what it shows on monitoring and stuff. Okay, this should be good enough for today. uh, so yeah, that is what is Railway and what we are going to use. So if there are no further questions, let's take a 5 minute break, 10 minutes break. Let's say, I think a 5 minute break should be good enough. Okay, let's take a 5 minute break and then we'll be back. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, just having my coffee. Uh, so, welcome back. And we have like around 25-ish minutes left, which should be good enough to at least deploy our backend and get started on Railway. So, let us get started. Also, I'm so sorry about the bots, too many of them. So, what do we need to do? So, we need to go over to the login page of this, which, if I'm able to find, okay, just click on that. So what are we going to do? We are going to create an account on Railway, and it is free. I don't think it requires any credit card, so it should be good enough for our use case, for our application. So we need to create an account on this. We need to connect it with GitHub. Okay, that is very important. Connect it with GitHub. Then and only then you will be able to deploy. So create an account on Railway, connect it with GitHub, and that's it. Okay, that's all we need to do, and then we will deploy our code. So let's do that. So I am not going to bombard myself, uh, which I think I already did, but okay, whatever. Let's add our email address, and I am going to do that outside from here. Or actually, you can kind of sign in with just GitHub. And once you have done that, you should reach somewhere around here. Okay. So this is what will give you the free trial of $5, which has like 512 MB of RAM, 1 GB of disk space, 2 CPU processor capacity, and that's it. Okay. So I hope you all have reached at least this point. You can log in with GitHub and you'll be in Railway. Okay, that's all you need to do. So I'm going to wait for a couple of seconds, like 30 seconds, because it took me like less than 10 to log into Railway. So 30 seconds, please create an account on Railway if you want to follow along and stuff. And once you have done that, what we are going to do is actually locally, we want to add all our code because we want to deploy it. Now, the problem with deploying just directly from, uh, pushing this code to GitHub from Replit is that it also will push the .replit, replit.nix, and a lot of other things. So I really don't want that. So I think the best way to do it is to copy paste this code locally. Now, at least for your, what do you call it? For backend, this should be easy enough. We only need the package JSON and the index.js file, and that should be enough. Okay, that's enough to get everything up and running. So that's what I'm going to do. So locally, I have created a repository, a folder, and inside this folder, I am going to create a backend folder. Inside the backend folder, I'm going to create a package dot JSON file. Okay. Yeah, package.json file. And I'm going to copy whatever we have here, go over to our package.json and paste it right there. The name will be Cloud GHW Cloud Week backend. I'm going to change that name. Version is fine, description is fine. Our main file, I am actually going to call it or rename it to server.js. Okay. There's a dev script, there's a test script which does not work. So actually I can remove it. I can have a start script which is very simply node space server.js. Okay. Keywords don't matter, author doesn't matter, this doesn't matter. Replit database need that. Types node needs that. Course, yeah, and yep. Okay, perfect. So this is all the things. Now I normally don't like the caret symbol or this up arrow thing. Why? Because that means that when you run npm install, it will install anything that is like a major version. So like let's say 3.0.1. Tomorrow, Replit actually releases a version 3.1.1. So it will get updated. It will automatically get updated here. But I don't like that because you want the environment to be reproducible. Okay, you want to know exactly which package has been installed. So removing the caret, I think, is the best way to move forward. Also, let me go away so you can have full view of the screen. So removing the caret, I think, is the best way possible. So I have created a backend folder inside my like a root folder. Okay. So I have created this folder called as GHW Cloud Week 2024. Inside that, I've created a backend folder in which I have this package JSON, which is copied over from Replit. And next part is this index.js. Now, as you can see, I want to rename it as server.js. So that's it. And I'm going to paste it. So that's, I think, it actually. Uh, we have created a server.js, which is exactly the same code as what we had before, right? So once that is done, what we can do is we can actually, like if I do a ls here, it says that there is a backend folder. So cd into backend folder, and now I can do npm install. Okay, I want to run npm install. So once once the installation happens, then we'll have a node modules folder automatically created, a package lock JSON automatically created. Now, how do I run this? I can just do npm run dev, which is what we were doing there, and the app crashed. Why? Because it is expecting this DB URL got undefined. Where is that happening? Uh, it should show you the line number normally. Server.js 812. Okay. So server.js is the file, line number 8 and column number 12. Now, column doesn't matter, but it's basically saying that here, when you are doing the new database, it needs the DB URL. It did not need the DB URL when it was on Replit itself, but here, when you are running it locally, it needs the DB URL. So, how to get the DB URL? Uh, I am actually going to do that here. So I can do console.log process.env.replit db URL. I think that's what you need to do. And this is the db URL. Okay. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to remove that from here. Go back and we need to set a .env file. So I'm going to do a .env, which means this is the environment variable. It will be, the name would be replit underscore db underscore url, and the value will be whatever we copied from there. I also want another environment variable called as port number, which would be 5001 by default. So now if we go here, process.env.port, and for the new database URL, we can go like, I think it needs db URL, right? We can do process dot env dot replit underscore db underscore url. Okay, so we have done that and it's still crashing. It says the expected DB URL got undefined. So let's actually console log this first. So console.log process.env.replit DB URL, and you can see it says undefined. Okay, like let me console log it better. Yeah, right here. Process.env.replit.db URL is undefined. So it's not able to load it from the .env file. So to solve that, we actually need to install another package called as .env. Oh, yeah, could do that. Let's try. Restarted it and it's still undefined, I think. Yep. So I restarted it, like clear everything and npm run dev, and yep. So because it's not able to read that particular environment variable, so what we could do, like this is what I actually found, is that you have to install a library called as .env. Okay, so similar to course, but different, yeah, usage. .env, it loads environment variables from a file. Okay, so to install locally, you need to do this, and all you need to do is at the top of your application, you need to do require.env.config, and that should do the trick. So I am going to copy this npmi.env, which I am going to also share with you all. So npmi.env. Now inside the package JSON, we should have a new library.env. The problem is it's with this thing, which I should have figured out that it will be like that. So I'm going to actually remove my node module. So rm-rf, or you can just right click and delete your node modules and package lock. So move that to trash. Don't want the whole thing, so move that to trash. And I have removed the caret from everywhere. So normally if you have to do that, you could do like dash dash save dash exact. That will ensure, like I can show that to you, that will ensure that it does not install with the caret. So I'll first install everything that we have, okay, minus the .env, and let me clear this. And now npm i.env dash dash save dash exact, and hit enter. So now it installed .env but without the caret, which means it installed the exact version, and it will not update later on. Okay, whenever you run npm install, it should not update. It will not update. So now if I run my server, npm run dev, interesting, it's still erroring. That should not have happened. Let me see. Const. Oh, yeah, it's still erroring because I've not used the main aspect of it, which is require.env.config, right? Yeah. So I need to put that. I think you need to put it somewhere here. Require dot env dot config. And now if I stop this and I restart it, okay, no error as such, and the database actually is now connected. Okay, and we can go on to like port 5001. Actually, let me create a constant variable. So const replit db url equals to process.env.replit db url, and I will take this variable and pass it right here. Perfect. So now if I go over to my local host colon 5001 GHW, and if I go over to slash API slash books, making a get request basically, it works. Okay, it gives me whatever I have in my database, which apparently is one single book. If I check that on Hopscotch, yeah, that is true. So we are connected to the database and we are able to fetch data from database. Okay. So that's our backend actually kind of done. And now we need to push our code to GitHub, right? Now I have like two different accounts. So I will need to configure some stuff. Also, let me add a .git ignore. I don't want node modules to be pushed. Okay, node modules folder should not be pushed. Mac has this very annoying .ds underscore store that does not need to be pushed. So I'm going to add that into my git ignore as well. We don't want to push the .env file because, well, .env is environment variable and it's supposed to be secret. Okay, you do not share your environment variable with others. Like, do not showcase it on GitHub. You should not ever. Uh, Other than this, we will later on create .env.local and .env.production. So because I know that we'll create it, I will add that here. Uh, Plus, other than this, there are a few which actually is going to come from Vite. So I am going to copy paste all of that, everything that comes from Vite normally right here. And how do I share this with you? I can go over to our .git ignore. Oh, a file or a folder with that name already exists somewhere. Oh, there it is, .git ignore. And yeah, this is basically what I wanted to add, but it has a lot of things. Uh, so what you all can do is go on this URL, okay, my replit, copy paste the whole .git ignore and paste it in your local, okay, in your local folder outside of backend folder. Okay, you can see that the backend folder and the .git ignore, they are in the same line, which means that it is out, the git ignore is outside of my uh, folder. Okay, outside of my what do you call, backend folder. Okay, it's in the root. We also need to create a front end folder, so let's do that. And to do that, we will actually use Vite. So I can go to React.js guide, and to create a new app, you could do something like this. So I'm going to paste that in a new, actually just right here. It will be called, my new folder will be called front end, and the template is going to be React. Okay, why? Because this will create a boilerplate code for me, which is good enough for me to get started. So let me go over here to my server. I'm inside backend folder. I'm going to come one level up. Let me clear everything. And I'm going to paste that line. So now you can see it created a front end folder with some configuration. And there's this .git ignore. Okay, the default .git ignore. I don't need this inside the front end folder, so I'm going to delete that. And also let me share that line that I wrote with you all. So this is a front end folder, okay, created. But we have created this actually on Replit, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to go over to Replit, go to package.json, and we are going to copy whatever is here. So copy this, come over to, should we not? Actually not, we are not going to copy everything that's here. What libraries did we install? Step one, actually let's remove the caret first. Okay, so no caret. The dependencies, one of the libraries that we installed is Axios. That should go right here without the caret, so that you can reproduce the environment. That is very important lesson actually from today. Uh, all this is actually right here, so we don't need all of that. As in, like, we don't need to do anything. The name of this, if my backend is called GHW Cloud Week Backend, this should be called GHW Cloud Week Backend, then I am going to call this GHW Cloud Week Frontend. Okay, private to, okay, to version 0.0.1, and even on the backend I'm going to make the version as 0.0.1. Type module, that's okay, this is okay. Yep, I think this should be good enough. What else? If we go over to our index.html, my title would be book library, and then type frontend. Actually not required. Not going to change anything here. Inside my public folder, there's a wheat.svg. Don't really need their logo, so I'm going to delete that. Assets folder, not really required. We don't have any assets, so I'm going to delete that as well. App.css, we have written our own CSS, right? So if I go over to our source folder, app.css, I'm going to copy this, come over here and paste it. App.jsx, we have that again, we have written our own. So I'm going to copy this, come over here and delete theirs and add ours. We have index.jsx, which I think main.jsx, and it's exactly the same. They are using index.css, but we don't need that. So I'm going to delete the index.css. Okay, so this is all like cleanup that we are doing right now. We have everything. The only problem is that these components, okay, we don't have that. So inside the source folder, let me close all this. So inside the source folder, we are going to create a new folder called components. Inside the components, we need to have these 4 components that we created, right? So add book.jsx is the first one. And I'm going to paste this code. Then the second one is book list.jsx. So book list.jsx. Paste this code. Delete book.jsx. So inside the components, create a new file, delete books.jsx. Paste this, and finally delete database. Okay, copy this, come over here, delete database.jsx, paste that right here. And now we need to do one final thing. If we go over to our app.jsx, you remember this Axios defaults URL, base URL. I want this to be an environment variable as well. So in Vite, if you have to refer an environment variable, so in Node, we were doing process.env, if you remember, right? Process.env dot whatever is the name. Here you do import dot meta dot, I think env is what you need to do. I can check the Vite documentation very quickly. Yep, dot env dot whatever is the name of your environment, name of your variable, and it needs to start with Vite underscore. So Vite underscore base underscore API underscore URL. URL is what I'm going to name it. Okay. So Axios defaults base URL import dot meta dot env dot wheat underscore base API URL. So this is the name and it needs to start with base underscore. Let me close everything right here. Where should our environment variable be? It should be inside the frontend folder. Okay, inside the frontend folder at the same level as these things. So I'm going to create a new file and call it .env .local. Okay, and locally, if the server is running, then it should be http colon slash slash localhost colon 5001. But in production, when we deploy it, .env.production, we are not sure what the URL will be. So I am going to keep it empty for now, at least like for now. But let's test this. So if I cd into okay, let's go to the backend folder on the top one, and let's go to the frontend folder at the bottom one. Let me run the backend. Npm run dev. Okay, npm run dev. So it's running on port 5001, and let me run the front end. So npm run dev is the command here. Oh, we have not installed anything. So let me also install the front end. So npm I should install all the dependencies, all the libraries that are mentioned here will be installed. How do I know that? Because, well, node modules was missing and now it's here. So let me clear this and npm run. You can see the script is called dev. So dev, and this should start the front end. It's on localhost colon 5173. So if I go to localhost colon 5173, oh, oops, this is not called delete books, it's called delete book. Yeah, there we go. The front end is running, and if I make a request of get all books, it should get the book. And let's see, if we go over to network tab, the headers, it's getting it from localhost colon 5001, okay, which is our backend server, right? So actually I see that we are going to go over, like we are actually over time. So let me come back on screen. Any questions, anyone, before we go on for an 1 hour break and then we'll have the third session? So till now, what have we done? We have copied all the code that we have of the front end, of the back end, and we have run the back end properly and it's up and running. We have run the front end properly, it's up and running. And all of this will be available on YouTube video, okay, at the end of session. So if you are missing something, it's going to be on YouTube. It's also going to be on my GitHub very soon because we are going to push it to GitHub and then deploy it on Railway from there. Okay. So if there are no further questions, let's end this session now and then we'll come back after 1 hour. Anyone, anything? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as golden. Thank you so much, everyone. I know it seems like, oh, we are doing so much. This is so long. This is boring, but very soon we'll reach the next bits. Okay, because once we reach the railway, it's click and deploy, and the own VPS will be OVH Cloud, and that requires a credit card initially. It will give you free credits, but it requires a credit card. So not everyone will be comfortable adding it, and that's okay. I have added mine, so I will show you step by step of how to do it. Okay. But other than that, okay, let's end this for now. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much. And thanks for the motivation there. Appreciate it. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.